Hi, it's Paul. In this clip, we're going to look at high-grade SIL. And first of all, we'll start with the histo. So on the left-hand side here, you can see normal stratified squamous epithelium. This is a large loop excision of the transformation zone, a LETS biopsy of the cervix. So notice in that normal epithelium, it's darker along the bottom. That's because immature cells have less cytoplasm, so there's more nuclei. And there is an orderly progression to the whole thing. So the cells move up through that epithelium to the surface, they flatten out, become more squamoid looking, have a lower NC ratio, and are more keratinized. So we can see gland cells underlying this and then see a fairly abrupt junction there to a different looking epithelium. That's the HSIL, and it's running over the top of gland cells. But if we follow it around, you can see that single layer of columnar cells on the right-hand side there. That's the endocervical epithelium. So this lesion is in between that and the squamous epithelium. And you can see that even at this power, it looks quite different. It's very dark. That's because there are dark, enlarged nuclei throughout the whole of the epithelium. And we can see on a higher power that they're distributed right throughout that epithelium, really large, hyperchromatic, coarsely granular nuclei. There are also mitoses occurring throughout the thickness of the epithelium. And you can see there's really quite a lot of variation in nuclear size and shape in the epithelium. So if you compare, say, this nuclei with this one, there's quite a lot of variation. And notice only along that very top bit is there any differentiation, so flattening out of the cells. So in summary, HSIL usually occurs at that squamo-columnar junction, and it's basically an area of dysplastic metaplasia. It is a change that affects 2/3 to the full thickness of the epithelium, which pretty much that one was. It shows a loss of normal differentiation as the cells grow up through that epithelium. It shows mitotic activity, no longer just confined to the basal layers, but actually all the way up through the epithelium. And it shows obvious cytologic atypia. So that would be hyperchromasia, nuclei, variation in size and shape of the nuclei. Let's have a look at the cyto. So this group here looks a bit interesting. There's a background of mainly intermediates, but these look like darker. It's a nice normal intermediate. So you can see these cells are fairly small cells, so that's a neutrophil there, so they're not much bigger than that. But they have a nucleus taking up most of the cytoplasm. It's very dark, it's hyperchromatic, and it's centrally placed. See that one there still has really squamous cytoplasm. I can see the border of the cell quite well, and it's not columnar. It's a round cell with a nucleus centrally placed. But notice there's variation in nuclear size and shape, hyperchromasia, and quite high NC ratio. This case has quite a lot of them lying around. See, they're quite small. They're in little loose groups in this case. Intermediate cell, debris, neutrophils, and here are, again, high-grade SIL cells. So notice how little cytoplasm they have, very high NC ratio, quite irregularly shaped. That one down there has quite coarse chromatin. This is a little loose group of them, and if I focus up and down, you can see there's quite a lot of variation in size and shape. That's always very helpful. They're very hyperchromatic, and not many of them are nice and perfectly round. Most of them, that one there is fairly oval, but a lot of them are more teardrop shaped, like that one. And they have coarse but even chromatin. So these are high SIL in what I would call a loose sheet. It's only maybe 2 cells deep at the most. Here we go on low power. It's a different case. Hopefully you can recognise by now what those might be. Even in this power, I think I can see that they're all in focus at once, and they have quite an organised, orderly honeycomb pattern to them. This group over there, however, looks different. So we'll look at these. They're in focus at once, and I can bring up a honeycomb pattern quite nicely if I focus down off the nuclei. Notice they're all keeping their own distance from each other, and they're very orderly. This group, on the other hand, looks quite disorganised. There's a normal intermediate there. See, the nucleus on it is much smaller than these. Notice also the chromatin in these is quite different. It's coarsely granular. Same case, this is a bigger group next to those endos. And you can see even at low power, it's not looking endocervical. So the nuclei are not in focus at once. There's another intermediate. They're quite large. They're much darker. This is probably a few nuclei deep if I focus up and down. And as I do that, you can see how variable the nuclei are. They're all hyperchromatic, but the chromatin pattern on them is varying quite a lot. The size and shape of them. See that one there is quite spotty, like a leopard. And there is very different shapes, like compare just small nuclei to large ones with their neighbours. Another group, this is extremely hyperchromatic. I can't really even see in the middle. Almost looks like endometrial cells, doesn't it? But there is much too much variation in size and shape amongst these cells that you can see around the outside, just another group, for them to be endometrial. Very high NC ratios, and this one's showing a couple of spindly type cells in the middle there, and that's typical of squamous differentiation. And if I see that, I'm thinking high-grade squamous intraepithelial lesion. Again, just a couple of cells showing that irregular nuclear membrane, so little indents and notches in it. So in summary, HSIL presents in 2 ways really, or 3 I suppose. Single cells, very loose groups of them, and then those dense, crowded, hyperchromatic groups like the ones we just looked at. The cells have a high NC ratio, and as a result the groups are very crowded, and the cells that you see singly have just a thin rim of cytoplasm around them. They usually still retain definite squamous cytoplasm, but so that would be a well-defined cell border and a centrally placed nucleus. Nuclei show anisokaryosis, so variation in size and in shape. They're usually very hyperchromatic and have quite coarse chromatin and an irregular nuclear membrane. So all of these things that we've looked at in squamous intraepithelial lesion are marked in high-grade lesions. That is markedly high NC ratio, markedly hyperchromatic, markedly irregular nuclear membranes, and that's pretty much high-grade SIL for you.